Under the streets and buildings that today form the busy capital of Texas, there is another world, nor older, stranger and infinitely more dangerous. A network of tunnels and caves that do not appear on any official map, inhabited by beings whose existence challenges everything we believe to know about American history. In 1841, when the Republic of Texas was only in its 5th year of existence, President Sam Houston discovered this underground city. What he found in the depths has forever changed his view of the nation that helped found and almost altered the destination not only from Texas, but from the whole continent. For almost 2 centuries, this story remained buried, protected by silence oaths and classified documents. Today, finally, the truth emerges from the shadows, a truth that forces us to question who really controls the direction of history, and which creatures may be observing the underground right now. You may have already felt, walking the streets of Austin on a particularly silent night, that feeling of being observed from somewhere below your feet. The sudden shiver without explanation. The inexplicable odor of wetland and something older, more primitive, emanating from culverts and cracks on the asphalt. It is not your imagination. It is the echo of a secret that began with a desperate president, a capital under construction, and a discovery that almost destroyed the young republic even before it could actually be born. Austin's underground city. Of the unpublished memories of Sam Houston, 1859. I never intended these pages to come to light while still alive. Maybe not even after my death. There are truths that a man carries to the grave not for fear of his own reputation, but for concern for the fabric of society itself that helped build. However, recent events force me to reconsider this silence. The tremors felt in Austin last month. Reports of missing workers during the city's expansion. The strange symbols found carved in the new foundations of the Capitol. They are awakening again. Therefore, I now record the full account of what I found during my 2nd term as President of the Republic of Texas, in the fall of 1841. May those who find these pages can be more prepared than I was. After years resisting the idea, she finally gave in to the pressure of Congress to transfer the capital of the Republic of Texas to Houston to the newly founded city of Austin. The decision never pleased me. Austin was dangerously exposed to attacks on the Comanches and too far from the commercial center of the developing country. But politics often requires commitments, and this was one of them. In September 1841, I traveled to inspect the progress of the construction of the new capital. The previous weeks had been marked by worrying reports from the scene. Workers disappearing. Abandoned tools. Strange sounds at night. Most members of the cabinet attributed such accounts to the superstitious nature of workers, many of them recent immigrants or former freed slaves who had brought with them Old World or Africa beliefs. I wasn't so right. My years living among Cherokee taught me not to discard so easily stories that civilized men would consider mere superstitions. There were old truths on this earth, known by the peoples that inhabited her long before the arrival of the Europeans. I arrived at Austin on a damp, cloudy afternoon, mounted on my favorite horse, a brown stallion that called Saracen. I was received by the construction supervisor, Edwin Waller, who seemed considerably tense than in our last meeting a few months earlier. His deep dark circles spoke of sleepless nights, and his hands shook slightly as he unfolded the updated city's plans for my inspection. "We are late, President Houston," he admitted, pointing to the area where the Capitol building should be built. "We found complications." "What nature?" I asked. Waller looked around nervously, as if he feared being heard, although we are alone in his makeshift office. "The soil. It's not as we expected. There are extensive cavities, sir. In the rock, she has marks. Brands? Notch. Patterns. Nothing natural." He hesitated. "And nothing our engineers have seen before. Not even those who worked in the big cities of the East." I asked to see these marks in person. Waller was reluctant, claiming that the sun would soon be set and that it would be better to inspect the next day's light. I insisted, however. When you are president of a fragile nation, surrounded by threats, you learn to trust instincts. And my instincts said there was something in Austin that required my immediate attention. Waller finally gave way, and together we walked to the great excavation that would form the foundation of the capital. Most workers had already left for their camps or rudimentary taverners that were beginning to flourish on the banks of Austin's urban planning. Only a few guards remained, apparently more concerned with the approach of the night than with possible intruders. The excavation itself was impressive. A large rectangle of about 60 for 100 yards, fell to a depth of almost 20 feet. We descended through a series of temporary wooden stairs to the bottom of the well, where large pieces of limestone had been exposed and partially cut. It was there, in the light of oil lamps, that I first saw the brands. They were not simple scratches or natural formations on the stone. They were deliberate, accurate, and disturbingly complex. Interlaced spirals, concentric circles, and angular shapes that seemed to change subtly when observed for a long time. In some places, the marks resembled writing, not the hieroglyphics of the ancient Egyptians, nor the pictograms of the natives I knew, but something entirely different. More fluid, more disturbing. "When did you find this?" I asked, my voice echoing strangely in the open space. 3 weeks ago. Since then, they have appeared more as we keep excavating. Waller pointed to the center of the excavation, where an area had been isolated with ropes. But that was discovered yesterday. We approached the isolated area. It was a circular section of the excavation floor, about 10 feet in diameter, where the limestone rock had been carefully cut and removed, revealing a dark opening underneath, a perfectly circular opening, with 2 plain edges to be natural. "A well?" I asked. "We thought this initially," said Waller. "But there is no visible background. We lowered a rope with more than 100 feet and found nothing." I crouched on the edge of the hole, holding my lamp over the opening. The circle of light illuminated the walls of what seemed to be a perfectly cylindrical tunnel, down straight to the darkness. The walls were not of irregular land or rock, but smooth and covered with the same strange symbols we had seen on the surface. "Did anyone get off there?" I asked, although I already suspected the answer. "2 men," said Waller, his voice lowering to almost a whisper. "Volunteers. Lowered them down with ropes yesterday morning. And they didn't return. We called for hours. No answer." He swallowed hard. "When we pulled the ropes, they had been cut. Well below our vision." A chill traveled my spine. Not out of fear, he had already faced death many times on the battlefield, but for the sudden and absolute certainty that we were in the presence of something beyond our understanding. "Stop all the excavations," I ordered. "Immediately." "But Lord, the capital dash." "We will find another place," I interrupted. "This is committed." I returned to Waller's temporary office and wrote official orders for relocation of the capital project. He protested, of course, citing additional costs and delays, but kept firm. Something in my expressions or tone must have communicated the severity of the situation, as it eventually gave way, promising to start preparations for a new location the next morning. It should have been the end of the subject. A mysterious well found, sealed, and forgotten under redirected construction layers. The story of Texas following its planned course, without deviations to the inexplicable. But I couldn't let it go. After dinner in my temporary quarters, when the makeshift city finally fell asleep, I returned to the excavation site alone. I convinced myself that I was only exercising the proper presidential diligence, ensuring that my orders to cease the work had been followed. But the truth was that something pulled me back to that hole, a curiosity that went beyond political or personal prudence. The night guards were few and easy to avoid for a man who had spent years living between natives, learning his silent ways of moving through the forest. It was soon again on the edge of the big excavation, cautiously down the wooden stairs with just a small flashlight to illuminate my path. The circular well remained as we had left, surrounded by strings and emanating a darkness that seemed deeper than the surrounding night. The logic said to turn around, return to my quarters, and the next day emit orders for the hole to be sealed with concrete and stone. Instead, I found myself by removing the isolation strings and crouching on the edge of the abyss. I don't know how long I stayed there, staring at the perfect darkness below. Minutes, maybe. Or maybe hours. Time seemed to behave strangely near that place, stretching and compressing itself like an accordion in the hands of a drunk musician. That's when I heard the first whisper. It didn't come from below, as it could be expected, but it seemed to get involved, as if the air around me had gained voice. Sam. House stan. I got up abruptly, turning in a circle, my hand instinctively seeking the knife I always carried. Who is there? I demanded, trying to keep my voice firm. Those who have always been. The voices, because now I realized that they were many, speaking in unison, seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. There was a pronounced sibilant, like that of a snake, but also a net quality, such as water running over stones. And then, from the opening, a light began to emanate. Not the yellowish glow of torches or lamps, but a pale, pulsating blue glow that intensified. I backed away a step, but my curiosity surpassed the instinct of self-preservation. I leaned back on the well and saw that the light came from something that was rising. At first I thought it was some kind of luminescent gas. So I realized that the light had shape. Translucent humanoid figures, slowly ascending through the vertical tunnel as if they were swimming through invisible water. They were vaguely similar to men and women, but there was something deeply wrong in their proportions. 2 long arms, thin and elongated torsos, heads slightly too large and strange. And their eyes, large, without eyelids, completely black, reflecting the very light that their bodies emitted. The first of them reached the edge of the well. There was no doubt that I could see me. His face turned directly to me, and although he had no recognizable expressions, I felt his intense focus. If he had a genre, raised a hand of 6 long, thin fingers. Son of Houston, the voices said in unison. Nations builder. Disturbing old soils. What are you? I managed to ask, my voice just more than a rough whisper. The creature leaned his head, a strangely mechanical movement. We are the first. Before the red hairy invaders. Before large animals. Before the retreat of the waters. We were. More creatures emerged from the well, hovering on the edge, their luminescent bodies spilling that green light over the bottom of the excavation. Soon there were 7 of them, forming a semicircle in front of me. What do you want? I asked, struggling to keep the composure. We want what has always been ours, they responded in their overlapping voices. This land. This place of power. This portal between worlds. Do you live down here? In these tunnels? A sound emanated from them, something that, with horror, I realized as a form of laughter. Not just tunnels, Houston Filio. City. Kingdom. Empire that existed when their ancestors still hid in old world caves. One of them approached, moving without seeming to move his legs, as if sliding over the air. I instinctively backed away, but I found myself unable to move more when his black eyes were fixed to mine. Come. See. I felt an irresistible feeling of tug, not physical, but as if my own conscience was being attracted to those empty eyes. I tried to resist, clinging to the stones under my feet, but it was useless. My vision darkened on the edges, and then I was falling. Or floating. Going down the circular well at an impossible speed, but without feeling the wind or air movement. The walls covered with symbols passed by smudges, and the blue-green light intensified. When my vision cleared again, I was elsewhere. It was a huge cave, so vast that I couldn't see the ceiling or the distant walls. But cave is an inappropriate word. It was a city. An underground metropolis of constructions that challenged human understanding. Structures such as inverted pyramids hung from the invisible ceiling. Crystal spiral towers and some bone-looking material raised from the floor. Impossible bridges of translucent material connected floating platforms. And everywhere, that same blue-green light, emanating from globes, puddles and currents that flowed like water, but behaved like fire. And there were more of those creatures. Hundreds. Thousands. Moving throughout the impossible city, some in groups, others alone, many performing incomprehensible tasks with tools that seemed to solidify light. Our house, the voices said, now seeming to come from inside my own head. Our truth. I realized I wasn't really there, at least not physically. It was like a dream, but with a clarity that no dreams have ever possessed. He could feel the fresh, damp air, hear distant sounds like Tilantano crystals and a low constant tinnitus, even feel a slight metallic flavor in the air. By eons, we slept. We retreated when the waters climbed. When the great beasts walked. When the reds were spread like plague. We awaited our moment. The images changed, as if I was being transported by the city. I saw cameras where hundreds of creatures were movable upright, suspended in a shiny liquid inside crystalline cocoons. I saw halls with walls covered from the same surface symbols, but here they pulsed and moved, constantly reorganizing. Now the new ones come. The dirt cutters. The stone builders. You, Houston Filio. Disturbing the sleep. Opening paths. Another change of scenario, and I saw myself observing what it seemed to be a floating globe in the center of a circular chamber. Inside the globe, I recognized the Texas landscape, but not as it was. There were huge cities, structures that resembled those of the underground city rising where there were now only sparse forests and forests. What was, it will be again, said the voices. You will help. Help? How? I found that I could speak, although I wasn't sure if I was really using my voice. You will build a city above. We will rise. As before. The globe changed, showing images of excavations, tunnels being opened, those creatures emerging to the surface while humans worked, apparently unconscious of their presence. You want to take Texas, he said, finally understanding. Do not take. Complain. Restore. What has always been ours? What if I refuse to help? Another change of scene. Now I was watching a different version of Texas flame cities, people running in panic, the sky darkened by clouds that pulsed with the same blue-green light from beings. And tall, pale figures walking calmly through destruction, occasionally touching a human who immediately frozen and then began to move mechanically, like a puppet. Choose, Houston Filio. Help voluntarily. Be exalted. Or resist and see your world burn. The images disappeared, and I met again by the well in the excavation of the Capitol. The 7 luminescent creatures still formed a semicircle in front of me, his black eyes fixed on me. Think. Decide. We'll return. And then, as abruptly as they had appeared, the creatures plunged back into the well, the light decreasing until only the darkness remained. I staggered back, falling sitting on the stone floor, shaking uncontrollably. I don't know how long I stayed there, struggling to process what I had seen, what I had learned. When I finally recovered the control, the sky above began to lighten with the first signs of dawn. I got up with trembling legs and, with a determination I didn't know, started pushing loose stones into the well. I worked frantically, like a possessed man, using naked hands to move pieces of limestone that under normal circumstances could barely move. This is how Waller found me, hours later, exhausted and with his hands in alive flesh, still desperately pushing stones into the abyss. President Houston! He exclaimed, shocked. What are you doing? Seal, I said, my voice hoarse. We have to seal this. Not just cover. To destroy. Make inaccessible. I must have seemed crazy. Maybe at that moment I was. But something in my expression or in the tone of my voice must have communicated the absolute urgency of the situation, as Waller did not question. Instead, he shouted for his men. For the next 48 hours, we work without rest. The original plan of simply relocating the Capitol was no longer enough. I ordered the entire excavation to be filled, not only with the earth removed, but with solid granite brought to the hurry of a nearby quarry. Then I ordered the construction of a fortified structure over the place, an innocent-looking barn, but with deeply descended foundations and were reinforced with iron. And finally, in secret, I hired 7 Cherokee elders, known for his spiritual wisdom, to carry out rituals of protection and containment about the place. They worked for 3 nights under the new moon, singing old songs and burying sacred objects in the 4 corners of the property. When everything was completed, I summoned a special meeting of the cabinet and presented an unexpected proposal, relocating the capital back to Houston, completely abandoning the plans to Austin. I found, as expected, fierce resistance. The money is already spent, the urban planning already implemented, the promises already made to the settlers and investors. They were solid, undeniable arguments. And against them, what could I offer? The truth? Reports of luminescent creatures in underground cities? It would be dismissed by insanity before I could finish my report. The political battle that followed was bitter and prolonged. In the end, Austin remained the designated capital, although I was able to significantly delay its complete development. I reoriented the construction away from the original place, insisting on extensive geological studies for each new Cavada foundation. And secretly, I established what we today call the Seal Guard, a small group of trusted men and women, committed to the constant surveillance of the original excavation site and other points around Austin where we detect signs of underground activity. In the following years, there have been incidents. Workers reporting strange voices coming from wells. Children disappear briefly and returning with stories of bright people who showed them the city under the city. Occasional tremors that did not seem entirely natural. But the ceiling remained. The guard did his work diligently, from generation to generation, and the former, if that is how they really are called, they have not fulfilled their threat of emerging in strength. Until now. Last month's tremors were not natural. The symbols found in the new foundations of the capital are identical to those I saw that night in 1841. And the current head of the ceiling guard, a man named Thomas Briscoe, descended from one of the original members, reported that ceiling above the original well is cracking. I'm too old to lead the fight this time. My time is ending. But I cannot bring this secret to the tomb, not now that the signs of your return are so clear. That is why I write these pages, so I institute that they are delivered to the one chosen to lead the guard after Briscoe's death. That can find a more permanent solution than I got. And if it is not possible to stop the former, may God have mercy on our Texas, and of our world. Samuel Houston, Huntsville, Texas, July 1859. The Ceiling Vigilantes. Excerpt from Thomas Briscoe 6, 2018. Another tremor today. The 3rd this month. The instruments indicate that the epicenter was exactly under the restricted property, our code to the original ceiling site. The tourists in the Austin Center probably didn't even notice. A 2.3 Richter scale tremor barely makes coffee cups shake. But for those of us who know the true meaning, it is like listening to the ticker of a time bomb. I performed the quarterly inspection of the ceiling yesterday. The original structure, the false barn built under Houston's orders, has long disappeared, replaced over the years with increasingly modern and discreet buildings. It is currently a small unidentified government building, supposedly using file storage. Local residents barely notice their existence, protected as it is by renewed Cherokee enchantments with each new moon and the most modern psychonic dissuasion technology that our limited resources can buy. But neither old magic nor modern science seems enough now. The cracks on the reinforced concrete floor are expanding. The symbols recorded in the beams of containment replicas of those that Houston has described in their diary are beginning to shine with that characteristic blue light, first only under ultraviolet light, now visible even to normal light. And the dreams, the damn dreams that all members of the guard are having. Underground crystal clear cities. Whispered voices promising power, knowledge, transcendence if we only help them return to their right. I am the 6th generation of my family to serve as the main guardian of the ceiling. I grew up listening to the stories, memorizing the protocols, performing the rituals. But nothing prepared me for what we are facing now. It's different. More intense. As if they were stronger, more determined. Or more desperate. I found something disturbing during the inspection. At the exact point on the original well, where the concrete is more severely cracked, there was an object, a small crystal pyramid, no bigger than my thumb, emitting that same pale light. It was not there in the previous inspection, I'm absolutely sure. And no one but the Guardians have access to that room. Which means one of them managed to cross, even if only enough to leave this. What? Message? Notice? Artifact? Following the protocol, I put the object in a containment container covered with the Cherokee protection symbols and transported it to our Marble Falls research installation. Preliminary results are disturbing. The crystal emits radiation and frequencies that our instruments can barely detect. And when the technicians tried to do a computed tomography, the machine simply stopped working, not just hung up, but the entire internal system melted. Worse yet, 3 of the coaches who were closest to the crystal during the incident reported the same dreams that night. Dreams of levitating through crystal corridors, guided by tall and pale figures with completely black eyes. What Houston faced in 1841 is returning. And this time, I'm not sure if we can contain them. Contact. Field report of Special Agent Maya Delgado, Division TX7, 2023. Classification, Ultra Secret Authorization, Omega Level Distribution, Selected Eyes Only. This document details my meeting with non-human entities under the center of Austin, Texas, on June 17, 2023, and the implications for national and global security. Context: after the Austin magnitude 4.7 earthquake on June 14, 2023, which severely damaged the containment structure known as restricted property and resulted in the disappearance of Thomas Briscoe VI, last known guardian of sealing, I was assigned to lead a recognition team composed of 3 field agents and 2 specialists, a geologist and a linguist familiar with the symbols described in the files. Houston. Mission: evaluate the integrity of sealing, locate Briscoe if possible, and determine the threat level presented by the entities known as the First. Event chronology. 0200 hours, team reaches the restricted property, finding the building externally intact but with significant internal structural damage. The main containment chamber floor had completely collapsed, revealing the well described in the Houston files, now significantly wider, with approximately 20 feet in diameter. 0237 hours, monitoring equipment installed around the well perimeter detects continuous seismic activity of low intensity and anomalous electromagnetic radiation in non-standard frequencies. 0305 hours, we started down using rappel equipment and biological protection level 4. Communications via fiber optic cable to avoid interference with radio signs. 0342 hours, after descent of approximately 500 feet, we reached what appears to be a side opening, a perfectly circular tunnel, approximately 12 feet in diameter, extending horizontally west. The walls are covered with the symbols described in the historical documents, but now gently pulsing with greenish-blue light. 0410 hours, we advanced approximately 1,000 meters through the horizontal tunnel. The temperature began to constantly increase, reaching 85 degrees Fahrenheit despite the depth. Air remains breathable without supplementation. Linguist Dr. Harper notes that the symbols on the tunnel walls are changing subtly as we advance, as if they were updated in real time. 0437 hours, the tunnel ends abruptly on a semicircular platform that opens to. There are no proper words. An impossible cave of dimensions. Our instruments indicate that we are observing a space with at least 30 miles of diameter and not measurable height with our equipment. Visibility is clear despite the scale, illuminated by bioluminescent light sources and crystalline structures that reflect and amplify this light. What Houston described as a city is precisely that, but on a scale that challenges understanding. Structures that look like inverted skyscrapers hang from the distant ceiling. Towers of crystalline and organic materials rise from the floor, a surface that looks more liquid than solid, although support structures of impressive size. Floating bridges and platforms connect different levels of the city. And there is movement. Many first visible to distance, moving between structures. The preliminary estimate suggests a population at the thousands, possibly tens of thousands. 0502 hours, we detect movement approaching our position. 3 entities corresponding to the description of the first emerge from a nearby structure and go to our platform. They do not seem to use any visible propulsion method, simply sliding on the surface as if they were not affected by gravity. Following the protocol, we position ourselves defensively, but we keep weapons in a non-emitting position. 0505 hours, first verbal contact. The entities stop approximately 10 meters of our position. As described in the Houston files, they are vaguely humanoids, but with unsettling proportions, approximately 7 feet high, extremely thin, elongated limbs ending in 6 fingers, slightly large heads to the body with completely black eyes without visible pupils. Its skin is translucent, pale white, with visible internal structures that do not correspond to known human anatomy. Communication does not occur through conventional sounds, but as a direct projection in the mind, words and concepts forming as thoughts that are not ours. The feeling is extremely uncomfortable, as a psychic violation, despite the apparent kindness of the approach. You have returned, they communicate. As we predict. As we always knew it would happen. I identified myself as representative of the current government, explaining our presence as an investigative and non-hostly. I asked Briscoe's whereabouts. The Guardian finally understood. He now serves as an intermediary. How will you serve soon? I requested clarification. In response, I was shown not verbally, but through mental images a camera where Briscoe was suspended inside a crystalline cocoon, seemingly conscious but still, while light filaments connected to his head. He learns our story. Our purpose. Our pain. How Houston should have learned, but resisted. I asked directly what its goal was regarding the surface and humans. Restoration. Complaint. Return. Words emerged simultaneously in my mind, accompanied by images of Austin and other cities of transformed Texas crystal-clear structures emerging through conventional buildings, human walking as in trance while the first moved freely between them. This land was ours when its species still crawled in the trees. We retreated only temporarily when the waters came. When the sky burned. When the air became poison. Now it's time to emerge again. I asked why they needed us, why Houston, why Briscoe, why our cooperation instead of simply taking forcibly what they wanted. The answer came accompanied by a sense of fun of condescending. Your world is fragile to us. Your light, your air, your sounds. We need adaptation. Intermediates. Those who can walk in both worlds while we prepare our full return. 0523 hours, the main entity extended her hand toward me, a clearly inviting gesture. Come. See how it was. How it can be again. Understand why resisting is not only futile, but counterproductive to your own species. At this time, I made the decision that will undoubtedly be scrutinized by my superiors. I accepted the invitation. Not for betrayal, but for the need for intelligence. Houston files are incomplete, he saw only what they allowed him to see. We needed to know more. Note, the following events are rebuilt in the best possible way. The experience had non-linear quality and included perceptions that challenge conventional linguistic descriptors. By accepting the entity's hand, there was no real physical contact, his fingers stopped at centimeters of mine, but I felt an immediate connection, as an electrical circuit completing. My consciousness expanded instantly. I saw their story not in sequential images, but as a complete block of knowledge. They are not native to the Earth, but they arrived millions of years ago, long before the first hominids. They came as refugees from a distant star system, fleeing a cosmic calamity. They were mainly established in vast underground structures, although initially kept cities on the surface as well. Multiple catastrophes forced us more and more for underground glacial periods, asteroid impacts, atmospheric changes. But they adapted, they developed technologies that fired organic and mineral in ways that our science only begins to explore in nanotechnology and biotechnology. Its final decline on the surface coincided with the emergence of the first anatomically modern humans. Not by war, simply because surface conditions have become more favorable to humans than them. They voluntarily retreated, entering a state similar to hibernation in their underground cities, with only minimal sentries remaining active. Original American natives knew their existence, the so-called cave inhabitants, in many indigenous mythologies. They established non-mutual non-interference pacts that were respected by millennia. European colonization disturbed these agreements. Expansion, mining, construction of deep foundations, each of these activities threatened their hidden existence. When Austin was established directly on one of his main population centers, the first began their awakening. Contact with Houston was his first attempt to establish a symbiotic relationship with the new surface dominators. His rejection and subsequent sealing were seen not as an attack, but as a disappointment, a delay in an inevitable plan. Now they are completely awesome. Its underground population, which extends far beyond Austin, in a network of settlements under much of Texas Central and beyond, is active and unified in purpose. More alarming, they are not the only ones. There are other similar populations under other global regions, specific mentions to places under parts of China, Egypt, Peru, and Russia. They are in constant communication through methods that transcend our understanding of physics, and are coordinating a global resurgence. The vision then changed to its intentions. They do not want to eliminate humanity, see us as potentially symbiotic. Useful, though primitive. Its technology can remedy much of the environmental damage we cause. Can cure diseases that we consider terminal. They can dramatically extend our longevity. In return, they wish coexistence in designated areas and rights specific to underground places they consider sacred or strategic. But this coexistence would be hierarchical, they as mentors/guardians, humans as protected/apprentices. And those who resisted this arrangement would be readaptated. The concept transmitted was disturbing, a form of neurological reengineering that would leave personality and memories intact, but would remove any opposition capacity. 0542 hours, the connection was abruptly interrupted. I found myself again on the platform with my team, which reported that I had been immovable for about 19 minutes, although for me the experiment seemed to have lasted hours. The first communicated a final message before they retreated. You now understand. Take this understanding to your leaders. We have existed in patience by eons. We can expect some more rotations from your planet around your star. But not indefinitely. Resurgence will come with human cooperation, or despite human resistance. 0610 hours, we return to the surface. Agent Keller presented signs of psychic influence, repeating phrases about beauty of the city and inevitability of return. It was placed in psychic quarantine immediately after we reached the surface. Conclusions and recommendations. The threat is real, substantial, and imminent. The first have technology and skills that significantly exceed our current defensive capabilities. Its existence represents a fundamental review of our understanding of earthly history and the place of humanity in it. Its proposal of coexistence is fundamentally incompatible with human notions of autonomy and self-determination, despite potential technological benefits. The Resurgence Global Coordinated suggests a scale of operations that transcends national jurisdictions. This is a situation that requires immediate international cooperation. I recommend the formation of a unified response task force with authority to operate regardless of conventional political constraints, combining military, scientific, historical, and psychological experts. Existing containment protocols are proven inadequate. I suggest immediate implementation of the Omega-7 protocol, deep nuclear burial, at Austin's site, while we investigate simultaneously other potential resurgence sites. Thomas Briscoe should be considered compromised and probably a hostile asset if found on the surface. Non-official personal note, what I saw has fundamentally changed my understanding of reality. I voluntarily submit to all available psychic screening and mental discontamination protocols, but I must express my concern that exposure to their minds and technology may have subtle effects beyond our current detection capacity. I consider myself compromised. Respectfully submitted, Special Agent Maya Delgado, TX-7 Division. Epilogue, Austin's Decision. Austin Mayor's Internal Memorandum, July 2, 2023. To Austin Municipal Council, closed session, of Mayor James Worthington. Subject, Guidelines for implementing the coexistence commitment. After extensive deliberation with federal representatives, national security experts, and our new partners, the mayor's office established the following guidelines for Austin's transition to his new status as the first officially designated city of convergence. Firstly, we reiterate that this decision, though difficult, was determined as the most beneficial course of action for the citizens of Austin and, by extension, for humanity as a whole. The proposed alternatives, including complete evacuation and remediation of the area, were considered unviable and potentially catastrophic. Starting on July 15th, we will implement Phase 1 of the transition plan. Harmonization stations will be established in key places throughout the city, initially presented publicly as health centers and community well-being. All residents will be encouraged, not required at this stage, to visit these stations for orientation. The K-12 educational program will be supplemented with the new integral history curriculum, including materials on our terrestrial predecessors adapted for each age group. Construction will begin in the 7 access points designated through the city, publicly presented as urban renewal projects. These will serve as official portals to the lower city. The initial transition zone at the Austin Center, Annex Map, will be gradually prepared for architectural modifications as specifications provided. Residents of this area will receive generous compensation for relocation. The new Department of Spot Relations will begin training civil servants on appropriate protocols for interaction with official representatives of the former. I emphasize that we should maintain strict control of public narrative. The official language must consistently use terms such as partnership, cultural evolution, and mutual advancement. Any reference to conquest, subjugation, or similar terminology must be immediately suppressed. Remember, our partners can detect falsehood. Sincerity is not only diplomatically advisable but crucial to our personal security. For those who expressed ethical concerns, I understand deeply. I carried the same burden during our initial deliberations. However, after my own orientation session, I can assure them that many of these concerns are unfounded. The process is surprisingly kind and enlightening. The transition will be challenging. There will be resistance. But as I was shown in my guidance, Austin's future as a headlight of a new era of cooperation between species is incredibly promising and beautiful. Our city will be transformed into wonderful forms that we can barely imagine today. And as they often remember, we really have no viable alternative. A final reminder, Thursday's board meeting will include representatives of our partners for the first time. Prepare properly. Those who have not yet had a guidance session should schedule immediately. Together, for a brighter and more harmonious Austin. James Worthington, Mayor of Austin, first intermediary designated for human-prime relations. P.S. I observed some of you avoiding eye contact recently. This is unnecessary and can be interpreted as discorded by our partners. His eyes, although initially disturbing to some, are simply different, not evil. You will get used to it, as I got used to. Under the soil we stepped on ancient tunnels and forgotten caves. There are secrets that challenge our understanding of history and our place in this world. The case of Austin's underground city is not just a historical curiosity or an urban legend, it is a warning. What Sam Houston discovered in 1841 remains there, waiting, planning, one day perhaps emerging completely. The strange lights occasionally seen in the maintenance tunnels under the center of Austin. The inexplicable disappearance patterns every 27 years. Reports of municipal employees who suddenly seem to change personality after underground inspections. Coincidences? Perhaps. Or perhaps the first are simply being patient, as they always have been. Next time you visit Austin, watch carefully. Notice the foreign symbols occasionally visible in older buildings. Notice certain unidentified government buildings are meticulously avoided by local residents. And, above all, pay attention to whether he hears whispers from ventilation grills or manholes, especially if they seem to know his name. Because some stories are more than stories. Some are warnings. And others are prophecies just waiting to fulfill themselves. If you like this story about the dark secrets under the capital of Texas, be sure to subscribe to more reports of historical mysteries and hidden horrors that shaped our country. Each week we explore the disturbing truths that history books conveniently forgot to mention. Leave in the comments which other American cities you suspect that can hide underground civilizations, and which other historical figures may have made pacts with beings that are not completely human. Activate the bell to be notified when new stories are posted, and share with friends who enjoy discovering that reality is much stranger and scary than they taught us to believe. Because remember, what is buried does not always remain this forever.